Most days, Officer Jake Monroe could count on Diesel to spot a squirrel before a suspect. But that Thursday afternoon behind Lincoln Creek Elementary, the German Shepherd came to a dead stop, then let out a growl Jake hadn't heard since the cartel raid in 21. Then he barked, loud, sharp, 3 times. The kind of bark that said, something's wrong, right here, now. And just like that, Jake's world, small-town cop, routine patrols, bake sales, and school crossings, was about to explode. The September sun hung low behind the maple trees lining the back of Lincoln Creek Elementary. Shadows stretched across the empty soccer field, and the last few kids had just been picked up by parents in minivans and pickups. The place was winding down for the day, peaceful, like it always was in Pine Bluff. Jake Monroe leaned against his patrol car, sipping lukewarm gas station coffee, tossing a tennis ball half-heartedly toward Diesel. The German Shepherd chased it with casual interest, until he didn't. Suddenly the dog froze mid-step. His ears snapped forward, and his nose lifted to the breeze. "What is it, buddy?" Jake asked, straightening. Diesel's muscles tensed. He took a few slow, deliberate steps forward, toward the rear fence that bordered the field. Beyond it was a patch of gravel behind the maintenance shed where delivery trucks sometimes parked. But school was out. No deliveries, no janitors, nothing scheduled. Yet there it was. A white box truck, plain, unmarked. No company logo, no plates. Just sitting there like it belonged, except it didn't. Jake narrowed his eyes. "Wasn't there this morning," he muttered. Diesel let out a low growl. They approached slowly. Jake's hand hovered near his holster out of instinct, though it felt ridiculous at first. But Diesel's behavior told him this wasn't a false alarm. The dog had been trained to detect more than drugs or explosives. He could sense stress, fear, danger. They reached the truck. It was battered, old, and dusty. The tires were clean, though, too clean for a truck parked on gravel. Jake peered through the driver's side window. Nothing inside but an empty coffee cup and a crumpled newspaper. "Smells off?" he asked. Diesel didn't respond like a pet. He circled the truck once, nose to the ground, then stopped at the back double doors and began pawing at the seam. Then came the barking, urgent, focused. A warning, a signal. Jake stepped back. "Okay, now you've got my attention." He called it in. By the time backup arrived, arrived, 2 other units from the Pine Bluff PD, Jake had cordoned off the area with yellow tape. Diesel hadn't stopped pacing, his nails scratching at the dirt, tail stiff, eyes locked on the truck like it was a bomb ready to blow. Sergeant Dana Ortiz pulled up in her SUV, stepping out with a furrowed brow. "A delivery truck?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "You called us out for an abandoned delivery truck?" Jake didn't smile. "Diesel thinks there's something inside, something alive." Ortiz turned serious in an instant. "You sure?" "Dead sure," Jake said. "He won't leave it." Another bark rang out, short, sharp, echoed off the side of the school building. Jake knocked on the back doors. "This is the Pine Bluff Police Department. If anyone is inside, knock or call out. We're here to help." Nothing. No response. But then a faint noise. So faint, Jake thought he imagined it. A thump. Then a scrape. Diesel heard it too. He barked again, more agitated now, clawing at the base of the door like he wanted to tear it off. "We need to open it," Jake said. Ortiz nodded. "Cut it." One of the younger officers grabbed a Halligan bar and approached with caution. 2 others raised their weapons, just in case. Jake held Diesel back by the vest. With a groan of metal and a pop of the latch, the doors creaked open. And then everything stopped. The officers froze. The smell hit first. Sweat, old food, something musty, like a basement. Inside, it was dark. No windows. But Diesel lunged forward, pulling Jake into the gloom. That's when they saw her. A girl, maybe 9, lying on her side in the far corner of the truck, curled into a tight ball, eyes wide, face dirty, lips cracked. Beside her, another child, a boy, older, maybe 11, sitting upright, clutching a stuffed bear like it was the only thing keeping him alive. And to their right, a third, a little one, couldn't be more than 5, lying still. Jake's voice broke. "We need EMS, now." As the paramedics rushed in and began treating the children, Jake knelt beside the girl who had been lying still. She stirred when Diesel pressed his nose to her cheek. "He's friendly," Jake whispered. "He's the one who found you." Her lips trembled. I heard him barking." "You're safe now." Ortiz's voice came from the back of the truck. "Jake, you need to see this." In a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards, hastily covered by a plywood panel, was a rolled-up map, faded, marked. It wasn't just scribbles, it had routes, times, locations, drop-off points, pickup zones. Jake unrolled it on the back of his cruiser and stared. Some of the circles were near other schools. This wasn't just a one-off, Ortiz said grimly. This was a delivery system. Diesel sat beside him quietly, his breathing steady, eyes fixed on the children now wrapped in warm blankets near the ambulance. Jake ran a hand over the dog's back. You knew, he said softly. You always know. The truck was towed. The children were taken to the hospital. Their identities weren't yet clear, but initial reports suggested they'd been missing from 3 different counties, weeks apart. No one had seen the truck arrive. No one had heard them cry. But Diesel had. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Jake Monroe stood in the small conference room at the Pine Bluff Police Department. A pot of coffee brewed in the corner, but no one was drinking it. The room smelled like paper, polyester, and stress. Unrolled across the table was the map they'd pulled from the hidden compartment beneath the truck. A dog-eared road atlas, pages taped together, faded from use or intentional aging. Jake couldn't tell. But the circles drawn on it in red marker weren't random. They were targeted, each one centered near elementary schools, parks, or bus stops, marked with dates and times. Some had check marks, others had question marks. One was circled twice. Jake ran a finger across it. These aren't deliveries, he muttered. They're pickups. Across from him, Sergeant Dana Ortiz leaned in, arms crossed tight over her chest. I've already run the addresses. There have been 5 missing kids reported within a 10-mile radius of each marked location, all within the past year. Jake exhaled through his nose, jaw clenched. We're not dealing with some creep in a van. This is structured, and someone's still out there planning the next move. Jake's hand instinctively moved to Diesel's head. The dog was curled beside his feet, eyes closed but ears flicking at every sound in the room. Even in rest, he was alert. Outside the conference room, the hallway echoed with the soft tread of boots and hurried conversations. The children rescued from the truck were now under hospital care, still unnamed in the system, still too shaken to speak more than a few words. The girl, the one with the cracked lips and empty stare, had whispered something when Diesel had licked her hand in the ambulance. 1 truck, 1 lady, 1 man. Not much, but it was enough to twist Jake's stomach. He turned back to the map. If these are past and future targets, then this one, he tapped the double circle, is next. Ortiz nodded. Scheduled for tomorrow. Jake looked at her. We don't wait for it to happen. They mobilized a plan by sunset. The marked location was Westmont Charter Elementary, about 30 miles outside of town, in a rural stretch of highway and cornfields. Not exactly a high-security environment. Open parking lots, minimal cameras, plenty of spots to disappear. Jake volunteered to take lead. Diesel would ride with him, of course. The next morning was overcast. Gray skies hanging low, the kind that made the world feel smaller and heavier. Jake pulled into the school lot just after 6 a.m., hours before the first bus was due. He and Diesel patrolled the perimeter on foot, checking behind dumpsters, along fences, even inside the old baseball dugout. Nothing out of place, no strange vehicles, no signs of tampering. Jake tried to quiet the thrum of nerves in his chest. The kids from the truck had likely been taken on school grounds. That much was clear. But how? In broad daylight, without a witness? And what if this wasn't a pickup location but something else entirely? Diesel sniffed along the edge of the staff parking lot, tail twitching. You get anything? Jake asked. The dog paused near a storm drain, nose hovering, ears sharp. Then, a low growl. Jake stepped closer. Talk to me, partner. Diesel sat and stared down into the grate, not barking, not agitated, just focused. Jake knelt down. It looked like a standard drainage pipe, large enough for runoff, maybe even for a person to crawl through if they were small. He pulled out his flashlight and angled it down. 30 feet in, something glinted. Jake grunted. Ortiz isn't going to like this. An hour later, a small team from County Search and Rescue arrived with the equipment. They popped the drainage grate, dropped a remote camera down the pipe, and followed the tunnel beneath the school property. What they found wasn't illegal in itself, but it was disturbing. A makeshift crawl space lined with the flattened cardboard and discarded snack wrappers, a flashlight, a small folded blanket, a pair of child's shoes, and then, scrawled into the concrete wall with what looked like charcoal, "Don't cry, stay quiet, She gets mad. Ortiz looked up from the monitor. They were holding them here before loading them. Jake's skin crawled. So whoever's behind this had access to the drainage system? Or blueprints? She stared at the map again. That's how they stayed invisible. By afternoon, the town was on alert. Local schools initiated lockdown drills. PTA groups flooded social media. News vans showed up outside the police station, but the chief kept the details quiet, only confirming that 3 minors were found safe thanks to the K-9 unit, and that an investigation is ongoing. Jake hated that part, the silence. But they couldn't risk spooking whoever was running this. Because it was clear now, this wasn't just about 3 kids. Back at the station, the forensics team finally got into the cracked phone found in the truck. No call logs, no contacts, but in the gallery, dozens of blurred, hastily snapped photos, all of children, some playing in parks, some getting off buses, others sitting on school benches. Jake flipped through them with increasing nausea until he reached one that made his blood freeze. A girl in a red hoodie, holding a juice pouch, sitting alone. Jake recognized her. She was one of the students from Lincoln Creek. He'd seen her during a safety presentation just last week. "Ortiz," he called. She rushed over. "What is it?" "They're watching. They've already picked the next target, and it's not Westmont." He held up the phone, showing her the timestamp. This was taken yesterday at Lincoln. The truck was a decoy. The real pickup hadn't happened yet. Jake grabbed his vest, clipped Diesel's harness, and headed for the door. "We're not waiting this time." Jake Monroe's foot hit the gas pedal so hard the cruiser fishtailed as he pulled out of the Pine Bluff Police Department lot. Diesel, ever the calm co-pilot, braced himself against the seat, his amber eyes fixed forward like he understood everything. And maybe he did. The photo, the timestamp, the same girl Jake had high-fived in the school hallway just days ago was now staring back at him from a smudged cell phone, taken without her knowing, clearly scoped out. They'd been watching. They were never planning to strike at Westmont, Jake muttered under his breath. That truck was bait. Lincoln Creek Elementary stood quiet under the overcast sky. School had let out an hour earlier, but a few kids still played near the monkey bars as parents lingered on benches, chatting. Jake's cruiser screeched into the lot and drew eyes immediately. He didn't wait for backup. Diesel jumped out the moment the door opened, nose twitching. Jake jogged toward the front office, but slowed when he saw her. Red hoodie. Sitting alone on the curb, swinging her feet over the edge of the sidewalk, sipping from a juice pouch. His pulse kicked up. "Hey there," he called, trying to sound casual. She looked up, curious, not scared. "You remember me, Officer Monroe?" She nodded. "You bought that cool police dog last week." "Yeah," Jake said, glancing around. "That's Diesel. Mind if we sit for a second?" She shrugged, legs still swinging. Jake crouched beside her. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Lila," he smiled gently. "That's a beautiful name." Inside, Jake alerted the front office discreetly. "Call her parents, now. Tell them not to come to the school. We're taking her straight to the station." "Is something wrong?" the receptionist whispered. Jake didn't answer. He kept his eyes on Diesel, who was now pacing between the flagpole and the far side of the parking lot. The dog stopped near a brown sedan, then growled. Low, controlled, menacing. Jake's hand went to his sidearm. He approached slowly, Diesel at his side. The sedan was parked too far from the building to be casual and too close to be unseen. Its engine was cool, its license plate partially smeared with dirt. Jake tapped the rear window with his flashlight. Nothing. Tapped the driver's side, no movement. Then he saw it, on the passenger seat, a zoom lens camera, turned off but still warm. "Someone's watching," he muttered. He popped the trunk, empty, clean, too clean. A blue tarp, some rope, zip ties in a glove compartment. Jake felt a chill crawl up his spine. Ortiz arrived minutes later, flashing lights cutting through the dreary sky. Jake briefed her quickly as Lila sat inside the cruiser, Diesel keeping a silent watch beside her. "She's the next target," he said flatly. "Same red hoodie, same juice pouch. That photo was taken yesterday. They've been tracking her." Ortiz swore under her breath. "And we just walked into the middle of their plan." Jake looked toward the tree line behind the school. "Or maybe we interrupted it." Later that evening, back at the station, Lila's parents arrived in tears. Jake stepped back as the little girl flew into her mother's arms. "She's safe," he told them. "That's all that matters." But it wasn't all that mattered. Not to Jake, not to Diesel, not when they were still no closer to knowing who was behind it. The phone found in the truck was now a cybercrime. It had no SIM card, no cloud backups. Every app had been wiped. Jake's gut said someone had done it remotely. "Like they knew we'd find it," he muttered. Ortiz sat across from him, scrolling through the mapped drop points again. This operation is tight, too tight for amateurs. You think it's a network? I think it's a business. 2 hours later, Diesel began pacing again. Jake looked up from his desk. You good, buddy? Diesel whined, then turned toward the hallway. Jake followed him. Diesel stopped outside the evidence locker. Something in there? Jake scanned his key card, pulled open the steel door. Inside, stacked among other boxes, was the black nylon backpack they'd recovered from under the driver's seat of the truck. Jake hadn't had time to go through it in detail. He placed it on the desk, unzipped it. Inside, a child's pink sweater, a broken Barbie doll, a worn composition notebook, and at the very bottom, a burner phone with no battery. Jake's heart skipped. He grabbed gloves and cracked open the notebook. First few pages were empty, then childlike handwriting, scattered phrases, some shaky, some crossed out. They said no crying or you go in the coal box. I miss my brother, he had the red truck. Don't look at her eyes, she hates that. Every Tuesday is moving day. Jake sat back. This is a diary. Diesel placed a paw on the edge of the table, staring at the page like he knew it too. Ortiz came in a minute later holding a file. You're gonna want to see this. She tossed a printed surveillance still onto the table. A woman, mid-30s, brunette, black ball cap, carrying a tote bag, taken from outside a gas station 4 towns over. She was seen near the same truck 2 weeks ago when another kid went missing. Bought energy drinks and a burner phone with cash. Who is she? Ortiz shook her head. No ID, no hits on facial recognition, but she pulled out another photo. Same woman, same hat, in the background of the school's surveillance footage. Yesterday. Jake stood frozen. She's bold. She's organized, Ortiz corrected. Jake turned back to the diary. He flipped to the last page. 3 letters scribbled in shaky ink. Ju-El, not a full word, not a name, not quite. July, he said aloud. Ortiz shook her head. Or initials. Jake frowned. Or, he looked up at the map again. One of the next target zones was circled in green, unlike the others, which were in red. Labeled simply June 17. A date. 1 week from now. Whatever this is, Jake said, it's far from over. Diesel barked once, short, loud, clear, as if to say, then let's stop waiting. The sun hadn't yet broken over Pine Bluff when Officer Jake Monroe pulled into the lot behind the station, coffee in one hand, Diesel in the passenger seat. The cruiser's engine clicked as it cooled, and the world was quiet for a few fleeting seconds. Jake stared out the windshield at the hazy silhouette of the forested ridge beyond town. July 17th was just 6 days away, and wherever that green circle on the map pointed, something was going to happen. Diesel let out a short huff. Yeah, Jake said, rubbing his eyes. No rest today either, partner. Back inside, Sergeant Dana Ortiz had already set up shop in the incident room. The whiteboard was now covered in photographs, maps, scribbled notes, and 3 thick red strings that connected them. At the center, a grainy photo of the mystery woman in the black ball cap. I pulled DMV records, social media tags, license plate scans, every retail security cam from 4 counties, Ortiz said without looking up. And guess what? She's a ghost, Jake said. Ortiz nodded. No prints, no hits, no ID. Either she scrubbed herself from every system or someone did it for her. Jake studied the image. She's not just a kidnapper. She's a handler, middle tier, part of something bigger. Agreed, Ortiz said, and she's moving fast. Another truck was spotted yesterday in Brantley. Same make, same model, parked behind a middle school. When police arrived, it was gone. Jake clenched his jaw. They're testing us, watching how we respond. Ortiz walked to the corner and retrieved a sealed evidence bag from the shelf. Inside, the burner phone from the backpack Diesel had alerted to the night before. No SIM, no data. But something odd. The back of the phone case had been peeled open, exposing a thin sliver of folded plastic. A micro SD card, barely visible. Jake's brow lifted. They left that on purpose. Or forgot it, Ortiz said. But we'll find out. By noon, the card was decrypted by the cybercrimes unit. Most of the files were corrupted or blank, but 2 short videos survived. The first was shot from inside a moving vehicle. It showed a rural road, trees, mailboxes, nothing revealing. But the timestamp read July 15th, 2:08 p.m. 2 days ago. The second video was darker, filmed in low light. The camera panned over a room lined with sleeping bags all in a row, each one zippered shut. A single bare bulb swayed from the ceiling. Children's voices whispered. One of them, faint but clear, said, "They said we're going to the big house next. No more schools." Jake froze. "What the hell is the big house?" he muttered. Ortiz didn't answer. She was staring at a still frame of the video, frozen on a door in the corner. Faint text above it read, Sector Joel 17. Jake and Diesel were back on the road that afternoon, retracing the footage frame by frame using GPS data from the card. The first clip had been recorded along a state highway just south of Cedar Falls, a town with a population smaller than Pine Bluff and one overworked sheriff. They drove past cornfields, rusted silos, and battered barns, the kind of landscape where secrets could hide in plain sight. "This doesn't feel like a new route," Jake muttered. "It feels like they've been doing this for years." Diesel barked softly once, tail twitching. Then they saw it. An abandoned church, off the main road, tucked behind a line of cypress trees, its steeple tilted like it had bowed to time. The front sign read, St. Juliana's Orphan Chapel, estimated in 1897, closed 2002. Jake parked across the road and let Diesel out. The dog sniffed the air, then moved forward, cautious but curious. There were no cars, no tracks. But Diesel's behavior changed as soon as they stepped onto the overgrown path. He stopped cold, nose to the dirt, then began pulling hard toward the side of the building. The back door of the chapel was unlocked. Jake eased it open, flashlight drawn, other hand hovering near his holster. Diesel entered first, his body low, silent. Inside, dust motes danced in the flashlight beam. The pews were covered in plastic tarps, and stained glass windows cast faint color over the faded hardwood floors. It looked abandoned, until Jake spotted it, a fresh boot print in the dust. Then another, smaller, child-sized. Diesel stopped beside a pew and let out a soft whimper. Jake swung the light down and saw it, a single flip-flop, pink, child-sized, half hidden under the bench. His heart sank. Then Diesel lunged forward, toward the pulpit, barking sharply at something behind it. Jake followed and found a trapdoor tucked beneath a loose floorboard. They were not alone. By the time Ortiz and backup arrived, Jake had already opened the passage. It led to a basement chamber about 12 feet below ground. Dirt floor, poured concrete walls, and in the far corner, a cage. Not bars, welded steel mesh. Inside it, toys, juice boxes, a folded blanket. And tied to the wall with frayed rope, a teddy bear, missing one eye. Jake stepped back, fists clenched. "There's no one here," Ortiz said, checking corners. "Not anymore," Jake said, "but someone was recently." Diesel sniffed along the edge of the cage, then stopped near a metal bucket, let out a low growl, and sat beside it. Ortiz knelt down. Inside the bucket, wrappers, crumbs, and beneath it all, a bus ticket, still intact. Jake pulled it out and read the stamp. July 17th, departing Cedartown Station, 8:40 p.m. His hand trembled. "They're moving them again." That night, back at the station, Jake stared at a map of train and bus routes. All signs pointed to Cedartown, a city about 60 miles east, larger, harder to control, more anonymity. The term Sector Joel 17 was starting to make sense. It wasn't a code, it was a schedule. And unless they stopped it, more kids would vanish without a trace. Jake turned to Diesel, who was curled up beside the desk, eyes half shut but alert. "You think we're too late?" he whispered. Diesel didn't move. Jake leaned forward, staring at the bus ticket. There was still time, but barely. The scent of diesel and concrete hung thick in the air as Officer Jake Monroe stepped out of his cruiser and scanned the parking lot of the Cedartown Transit Station. The building stood like a tired relic, graffiti-covered walls, buzzing neon signs, and rows of dented gray buses idling in the back lot. It was July 17th, 7:50 p.m., 40 minutes to departure. Beside by him, Diesel leapt down with silent determination. His tail was still, his ears twitching at every hiss of the air brakes and every echo of foot traffic in the lot. Jake looked at his partner. "Let's find them." Inside, the terminal buzzed with end-of-day commuters, teens with earbuds, moms with strollers, two men arguing over a broken vending machine. Nothing seemed out of place. But Jake had learned to stop trusting what things seemed. He made his way toward the information desk, showing his badge. "Officer Monroe, Pine Bluff PD. I need eyes on bus 2714, departing for Louisville at 8:40. Who's on the manifest?" The young clerk blinked. I'd need a supervisor for that." Jake leaned in, lowering his voice. 3 kids' lives may depend on it. That did the trick. She picked up the phone. While she made the call, Jake turned and scanned the benches. Diesel moved methodically, nose working, tail tense. There, near gate C, a woman in a black ball cap, reading a newspaper. Too calm, too still. Jake's heart ticked faster. "Let's take a walk," he muttered to Diesel. They approached from the side. Diesel stopped 5 feet away, gave a low growl. The woman didn't flinch. Jake cleared his throat. "Evening, ma'am." She looked up, smiled. "Is that dog dangerous?" she asked politely. "Only to the guilty," Jake said. Her eyes flicked to his badge, then to the exit. "Don't," Jake warned. "We just want to talk." But her foot twitched. And that's when Diesel lunged, not at her, but at the duffel bag sitting beside the bench. The woman bolted. Jake gave chase. She was fast, weaving through rows of chairs and startled passengers, pushing through the side exit toward the alley beside the terminal. "Stop! Police!" She didn't stop. She made it to the lot before Jake tackled her to the ground. She screamed, kicked, cursed. But Jake didn't loosen his grip, not even as backup arrived seconds later and cuffed her. "You don't know what you're doing," she spat. "They'll come after you next." Jake looked her dead in the eye. "Let them." Back inside, Diesel had ripped through the duffel. Inside, a burner phone, 4 envelopes of cash, 3 train tickets stamped Jewel 17, destination Atlanta, and 1 small pink notebook. Jake flipped it open. On the inside cover, a list of names, all children, some crossed out, some not. The woman refused to talk, not even when the federal agents showed up. No name, no ID, just silence. But the investigation was moving fast now. She had files, receipts, burner numbers, paper trails that finally weren't scrubbed clean. Still, something nagged at Jake. She wasn't the one in charge, he told Ortiz later that night. She was a link, not the source. Ortiz nodded. "But we broke the chain." Jake didn't respond. His thoughts were still back at the chapel. At the cages, the teddy bear, the coldness. They raided 2 houses the next morning based on addresses found in the woman's phone. One was empty, scrubbed clean. The other, a suburban duplex in Brantley. 2 bedrooms, 3 locks on every door. And in the basement, a false wall. Behind it, a room with soundproofing foam, locked cabinets, and a cot. No children, but evidence, lots of it. Photos, schedules, drawings, and on the back of a clipboard, a single sticky note. Next, Elk Ridge, Ayog 5, 6:15 a.m. Jake blinked. A new date, a new town. It wasn't over. Back in Pine Bluff, Diesel had earned local hero status. Kids at Lincoln Creek drew thank you cards. News vans parked outside the station. Talk shows called. Jake avoided all of it because there was no time to celebrate, because he knew what few others were willing to admit. They'd only scratched the surface. Late one night, Jake sat alone in the station, the evidence board glowing under a desk lamp. Diesel lay nearby, resting but alert. Jake flipped through the pink notebook again. There was something odd about the names. He hadn't noticed it at first, but now it jumped out. Every third name was from Pine Bluff, not nearby towns, not random. Intentional, he whispered. "They've been coming here longer than we thought." He circled the names, drew connections, added pins to the board. And there it was. A perfect triangle. Pine Bluff, Brantley, Elk Ridge. Rotating routes, rotating victims. Jake stood up. "Come on, Diesel. We're not done." The dog lifted his head, ears perked. At 3:15 a.m., Jake called Ortiz. "I know what they're doing," he said. "They're not just snatching kids. They're testing response times, law enforcement blind spots, local jurisdiction limits." Ortiz exhaled. "It's a network. It's a blueprint." Jake paused. "And I think the next target is in Elk Ridge." "What?" He stared at the map. "It's back here, back in Pine Bluff. They're counting on us thinking the storm passed." Ortiz was silent for a beat. Then, "What's your move?" Jake looked down at Diesel, who now stood completely still. "We prepare. We get every camera, every patrol, every uniformed officer out near that school." He narrowed his eyes. "And we let them think we've gone to sleep." By sunrise, Pine Bluff no longer felt like the peaceful town it once was. Police cruisers lined the curbs outside Lincoln Creek Elementary, their lights off but officers visible. A drone hovered overhead, scanning the parking lots and tree lines. Plainclothes units mingled at the bus stops and crosswalks, coffee cups in hand, eyes sharp behind sunglasses. This wasn't just surveillance. It was a trap. Jake Monroe stood in the administration hallway of the school, Diesel at his side. He hadn't slept more than 2 hours and his uniform still smelled like last night's coffee and old asphalt. But his mind was clear, focused. "They'll come back," he said. Ortiz stood beside him, arms folded, eyes on the monitor feed coming in from outside. "And if they do," she replied, "they're walking straight into a cage." The plan was simple. Let them believe the investigation had shifted focus to Elk Ridge. Pull visible patrols back just enough to give the illusion of normalcy. Keep school running like it always did. Let the network think they'd won. But they hadn't accounted for Diesel. He wasn't just a dog. He was the canary in the coal mine. Except this canary had a tactical vest and a bite force strong enough to snap a femur. Jake crouched beside him. "You ready to work?" he whispered. Diesel let out a low huff and locked eyes with the front gate. He was ready. At 9:17 a.m., the first oddity surfaced. A blue sedan, unfamiliar, circled the parking lot twice, then parked across the street near the community garden. Tinted windows, no bumper stickers. The driver never got out. Jake marked it mentally, told Ortiz through the comms. "Eyes on a blue four-door, garden side." "Copy," she replied, running the plate. 5 minutes later, a delivery van, unmarked, pulled into the faculty lot. No scheduled deliveries that day. Jake moved toward the window watching. The driver stayed inside. Too still, too early. Then Diesel growled, and that's when Jake saw it. A shadow moving behind the gym building, right where the cameras had blind spots. Until today. They were here. Jake clicked his mic. "We've got movement behind the gym. 3 suspects in motion. Go quiet. No sirens. No panic." In the command van, Ortiz relayed orders. A team of plainclothes officers peeled off toward the east side of campus. The drone zoomed in. Jake turned to Diesel. "Let's go." The shepherd needed no leash. He moved with silent purpose, weaving through the hallways like he knew every brick and echo. They slipped out a side door and circled around the staff lounge, cutting off the gym's blind side. Then they saw them. 2 men and 1 woman, all in dark hoodies, all wearing masks. One carried a duffel bag, another had bolt cutters. Jake didn't wait. "Police, get on the ground!" One ran. The woman froze. The third reached into his coat, until Diesel launched at him, teeth bared, impact driving the man into the wall. He dropped like a stone. Jake cuffed him before he could recover. "You picked the wrong town." The woman began sobbing on the ground. The duffel was opened. Inside were restraints, zip ties, a roll of duct tape, and 3 cell phones. Jake's stomach turned. They weren't just casing the school. They were going to take kids, right now. But it wasn't over. Ortiz's voice cracked over the radio. "We've got a problem. The van's gone. Blue sedan is in motion. They're running." Jake cursed. "Where?" "Headed toward Road 6, northbound." He spun around and pointed toward his cruiser. "Diesel, load up!" The dog didn't hesitate. They hit Route 6 doing 80, sirens dark, no backup close enough to assist. Ortiz kept him updated from dispatch. Blue sedan registered to a rental agency in Missouri. No name, fake license. "They're already disappearing," Jake growled. But Diesel barked sharply, his nose to the window. He knew they were close. 3 minutes later, Jake spotted the sedan. It was parked crooked on the side of the road. Driver's door open. No one inside. Then Diesel lunged toward the passenger side and started barking furiously. Jake stopped the cruiser, drew his weapon, and approached carefully. In the back seat, a child's jacket, and in the footwell, a note folded into a perfect triangle. Jake picked it up with gloved hands and read, "This was never about Pine Bluff. Stop looking at the trees." He stared. "What the hell does that mean?" Diesel let out a sharp bark and darted toward the ditch line, sniffing along a trail of broken grass and tire tracks. Jake followed, heart pounding. They reached a small clearing behind a row of pine trees, and there, hidden beneath a camouflaged tarp, was a trap door. Half buried, half rotted, Jake knelt. Diesel barked once, then sat, alert, still, waiting. Jake lifted the door and saw stairs, leading down. He called it in immediately. Ortiz's voice was tight. "Stay put. Backup's 5 minutes out." "I don't think we have 5 minutes," Jake said. "I'm going in." Diesel moved ahead. Careful, silent. The stairs creaked. The basement smelled like mildew and rust. A single light bulb swung from the ceiling. On the far wall, a bank of filing cabinets. In the center of the room, a metal table. On it, photographs, hundreds of them, laid out in rows. Jake stepped closer, flashlight trembling slightly. They were children's faces, each labeled, date, location. Some were crossed out, some weren't. Jake felt the room tilt. Diesel growled low, then bolted toward a door behind the cabinets. Jake rushed after him, shouldering the door open, and stopped. The room was lined with computer monitors, surveillance feeds, schoolyards, playgrounds, bus stops, even inside classrooms. Live footage, real time. And one monitor, center screen, showed Lincoln Creek Elementary. It was still active. Jake stepped back, heart pounding. They're still watching. This is the hub. A laptop on the table buzzed. He stepped forward, lifted the lid. It was connected to a satellite uplink. Live chat open. One message blinked on screen. You're too late. Then the screen went black. Ortiz and the feds swarmed the site minutes later. Everything was logged. Everything bagged. But Jake knew. This was just one cell. Just one branch of a massive tree. He walked outside into the cool morning air, Diesel at his side. The sunrise burned through the mist. Ortiz stood beside him. You did good, Jake. He didn't answer right away. He crouched beside Diesel, running a hand through the shepherd's fur. We're not done, he said quietly. There are more out there. Ortiz nodded. Jake stood, staring at the pine forest ahead. Then he turned to Diesel. You ready to keep going? The dog barked once. Sharp. Strong. A promise. The air smelled like rain. Jake Monroe stood at the edge of the clearing where the hidden surveillance room had been uncovered just 2 days earlier. Now it was surrounded by crime scene tape and federal agents in windbreakers. But the screens were dark, the cables unplugged, the system cold. A branch had been cut, but the tree still stood. He glanced down at Diesel, who sat quietly beside him, gaze fixed forward. Always watching, always listening. We're close, Jake said softly. I can feel it. Diesel let out a low breath through his nose. They weren't done yet. Back at the station, Ortiz poured 2 cups of black coffee and slid one across the table toward Jake. You're not gonna like this, she said. Jake took a sip. Those words always come with a headache. Ortiz placed a folder in front of him. Inside were documents recovered from the last site. False IDs, encrypted transactions, and one real name. Not of a handler, not a courier, but a financial administrator. A woman named Meredith Cross. Age 52, location Cedar Falls. Occupation regional director for a child welfare nonprofit. Jake leaned back in his chair. You're telling me one of the people running this thing is in charge of placing foster kids? Ortiz nodded grimly. And according to these bank records, she's been laundering money through multiple shell charities. Jake clenched his jaw. We've been looking at the shadows. She's been hiding in the light. They didn't wait for a warrant. With the evidence in hand and 2 federal agents in tow, Jake and Ortiz arrived at Meredith Cross's estate just after noon. It was a sprawling farmhouse set back against a grove of oaks, the kind of place you'd see in a home design magazine. White fencing, manicured lawn, an American flag swaying on the porch. Normal, peaceful, fake. Diesel jumped down from the cruiser, already alert. His tail didn't wag, his ears didn't twitch. He just stared. Jake knocked on the front door. A moment later, it opened. A woman with silver-streaked hair and a soft smile greeted them. Can I help you, officers? Jake held up his badge. Meredith Cross? Yes. You're under investigation for conspiracy, trafficking of minors, and fraud. We need to search the property. Her smile never dropped. I suppose you'd like to see the guest house. Jake blinked. Excuse me? She gestured calmly toward a smaller structure behind the main home. You'll find what you're looking for. It's all very well kept. She turned and walked back inside, leaving the door ajar. Ortiz looked at Jake. That was creepy. Understatement of the year. The guest house looked like a cozy Airbnb from the outside. Inside, it was a fortress. Steel-reinforced doors, soundproof insulation. Security feeds connected to portable hard drives. And in the back room, a false wall behind a built-in bookshelf. Diesel growled deep in his chest as Jake pulled the shelf aside. There was a door, and behind that door, 3 children. Alive. Terrified, but alive. The kids were dehydrated, but unharmed. A boy named Caleb, a girl named Olivia, and a third, too young to speak, maybe 4 years old, with a pacifier clipped to her hoodie. Jake knelt as Diesel approached them slowly, tail low, posture calm. The little girl reached out and touched Diesel's nose, then wrapped her arms around him. Jake felt the pressure in his chest rise until he could barely speak. You're safe now, he whispered. You're going home. Meredith Cross was arrested without resistance. She spoke once as she was led to the cruiser. I told them it would end eventually, she said calmly, but they didn't listen. Jake didn't reply. There was nothing left to say to her. The days that followed were a whirlwind, news coverage, reunions, commendations. But Jake stayed quiet through all of it. He sat with Diesel in the shade of an old oak tree behind the station, away from the noise. 3 more, he said, mostly to himself. You got them home. Diesel rested his head on Jake's boot. The weight of everything settled around them. Then Ortiz walked up, holding a manila envelope. Hey, she said, I thought you'd want to see this. Inside were letters from the families, from the kids, crayon drawings of Diesel with capes, medals, and big cartoon eyes. One read, thank you for not giving up. I heard you barking, and I knew I was going to be okay. Caleb. Jake swallowed hard. He rubbed his partner's ears. "You're more than a dog, Diesel," he whispered. "You're a damn hero." Later that week, Jake returned to Lincoln Creek Elementary. No patrol, no emergency, just closure. He walked the same path they had patrolled that first day. Before the truck, before the map, before everything. Children ran past him on the playground, laughing. Safe, normal. He leaned against the fence, watching. Then he felt it. Diesel nudged his leg. Jake turned and saw Lila, the girl in the red hoodie, walking toward him with her mom. She smiled shyly and waved. Jake crouched down. "Hey there. I drew you a picture," she said, holding it out. It was a stick figure of Jake and Diesel standing next to a sun and a rainbow. "I want to be a police dog trainer when I grow up," she added. Jake's throat tightened. "Well," he said, "I think you'd be great at it." That night, Jake sat alone in his kitchen, watching Diesel sleep peacefully by the door. So much had happened, so many things nearly lost. But the kids were home. The network was unraveling. And for once, justice felt real. He leaned back in his chair and looked at the stars through the window. Somewhere out there, others still needed help. And if they did, he and Diesel would be ready. Thank you for following Jake and Diesel's story, a journey of loyalty, instinct, and the relentless pursuit of truth. What would you do if your dog led you to a life-changing secret? Let us know in the comments. And if you believe in the power of second chances, loyalty, and courage, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who loves heroes on four paws. We'll see you in the next one.